Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. He moved to the mountains for silence, off-grid, off HOA, off the radar. But when a charmingly ruthless HOA president targets his land with fake laws, forged files, and a corporate agenda, one man finds himself in a suburban war he never asked for and refuses to lose. I still remember the moment I turned the key and stepped into what was supposed to be my quiet sanctuary, 4.7 acres of sloped land overlooking a valley in central Utah. After nearly 15 years working for the feds in property enforcement, and the last 2 buried in technical litigation consulting, I'd had enough of other people's drama. I wanted pines, I wanted space, and most importantly, I wanted silence. The house was nothing fancy. Built in the late 70s, it had a long, low frame, dark cedar siding, and a big wraparound porch that creaked just the way I like it. Needed work, sure, but I wasn't some helpless city slicker. I'd replaced roof shingles in a thunderstorm once, barefoot. This place? This was going to be easy. There was no HOA, and that was the entire goddamn point. The real estate contract was explicit. The parcel was carved out from the neighboring subdivision, Summit Hills Watch, by a previous owner with the foresight to file exemptions back when the HOA formed. My land sat just above them, outside their jurisdiction, like a holdout fortress watching over the pastel vinyl battlefield below. I moved in over the course of a week. It took 3 trips with my trailer, 2 Home Depot runs, and 1 minor hernia I refused to admit happened. After the final box was unloaded, I installed a temporary gate on the gravel driveway, placed my name on the mailbox, and set up my work-from-home station in the living room with a damn good view of the tree line. For 10 days, life was exactly what I'd envisioned. Early coffee on the porch, drone mapping the rear tree line for erosion, talking to no one. I began replanting the old pine belt on the north slope with Douglas fir and wrapped up a privacy fence along the southern perimeter. It was regulation height and permitted by the county. Still, I could practically feel the eyes from below burning a hole in the back of my neck. The first encounter came on a Tuesday. I was laying gravel near the front gate when a silver SUV crept to a stop just outside my drive. The window rolled down. A woman in her mid-50s leaned out, blonde bob like a helmet, eyes sharp behind expensive sunglasses. "You must be new," she chirped, like it was both a question and a warning. "Russ Marion," I said, standing up and brushing dust off my knees. She nodded slowly. "Karen Grayson. I'm the HOA president down in Summit Hills. Just wanted to personally welcome you. A few of us noticed the new construction and thought we should come say hello." I blinked. "This land's not part of your HOA. Her smile didn't falter. "Oh, I'm sure. Just being neighborly." Neighborly, right. She asked if I'd considered painting the house something a little more in line with community colors, then pointed out that my fence was quite solid, almost confrontational, and hinted that the height might not blend well with the visual rhythm of the hillside. I told her I'd pass on the rhythm. She laughed. It sounded like someone dropping glass marbles down a flight of stairs. Before she drove off, she handed me a folded envelope. "No rush, just some light reading. Guidelines, resources. Oh, and we're having a neighbor mixer this Sunday. I'm sure people would love to meet you." She didn't wait for an answer. I tossed the envelope in a drawer and forgot about it. I had drone batteries to recharge and a minor land slip to regrade before winter. But later that night, I pulled it out and gave it a glance. Inside was a glossy "Welcome to the Summit Hills Watch Family" packet, complete with branding guidelines, landscaping preferences, a list of acceptable exterior color palettes, and something called a behavioral harmony statement. I laughed until I choked on my own coffee. By Friday, the HOA had posted a flyer on my fence. Friendly reminder, residents are encouraged to maintain a neighborhood aesthetic standards. It was taped there, dead center, as if that made it official. Except I wasn't a resident of their little pastel prison. The flyer went into the trash along with the packet. I figured they'd get bored eventually. But then came the cars. The next day, I noticed a gray sedan parked near the base of my drive. The day after, a different SUV sat idling across the road for 20 minutes. Then, a couple walking their golden retriever paused at my fence and took photos. Of me, of the house, of the newly planted firs on the slope. One of them wore a Summit Hills HOA vest. I didn't even know those existed. By the end of the week, I'd had enough. I mounted security cameras, cheap ones for now, but wired directly into my server with offline backups. I installed motion-activated lighting near the lower tree line and replaced the front gate with a steel bar swing gate, welded shut unless opened from the inside. That night, I found a second envelope, this one stuffed into the gap in my gate like a dead fish. Inside, a note in perfect cursive. We strive for harmony in Summit Hills. Refusing to participate only creates division. Be advised, continued non-compliance may result in formal action. It wasn't signed, no letterhead, no official seal, just the smug echo of entitlement soaked into the paper. I folded it once, then again, and then again, until it was the size of a postage stamp. Then I lit it on fire and dropped it in the fire pit behind my house. It flared blue for a second, probably from whatever perfume she wore, and disappeared. I thought it was overkill. I was wrong. I woke up on the 10th morning to the sound of nothing at all, which should have been my first clue that something was wrong. No wind in the trees, no distant traffic from the valley, not even birds. Utah mornings usually had some kind of noise, even if it was subtle. This one felt staged, like a room right before a jump scare. I stepped onto the porch with my coffee and saw it immediately. A thick envelope, laminated, zip-tied directly to my front gate like a threat left by someone who wanted to make sure it couldn't be ignored. Bright white paper, bold black text, and the Summit Hills Watch logo stamped at the top like it meant something. I didn't touch it at first. I just stood there, mug halfway to my mouth, staring at the words "Notice of Immediate Vacating Order," printed so large they could probably be read from space. 3 hours. That was the deadline. According to the notice, my documented pattern of hostile non-cooperation, visual non-compliance, and community disruption had reached a point where the HOA was authorized to enact emergency corrective measures. Translation, get out or else. The letter claimed my presence posed a destabilizing influence on neighborhood harmony and that I was required to vacate the property within 3 hours of receipt to prevent escalation. No court seal, no judge's name. No reference number that matched any municipal format I'd ever seen. Just confidence, the kind that only comes from people who have never been told no in a meaningful way. I laughed. Then I stopped laughing because anger is funny right up until it isn't. I called Karen. She answered on the second ring, cheerful like she'd been waiting. I was wondering how long it would take you to see it, she said. 3 hours, I replied. That's new. Usually tyrants at least give you a day. Her tone cooled instantly. You've been warned repeatedly, Russ. You ignored every attempt at cooperation. The board voted. I'm not in your HOA. She exhaled through her nose. You're adjacent. You impact the community. You refuse to engage. You erected an opaque fence. You declined our color guidance. And you didn't attend the neighbor orientation. That sends a message. The message being that I mind my own business. The message being that you're hostile. I asked her very calmly to explain under what legal authority she believed she could evict a property owner from land he held clear. Title II. There was a pause, a small one, but it was there. We protect Summit Hills, she said finally. If that means removing bad actors, so be it. Don't worry. After you leave, we'll make sure the property transitions smoothly. We already have interested parties. That sentence stuck. Transitions smoothly. Interested parties. I hung up without another word and called the county sheriff's office. I explained the situation, used words like attempted coercion and fraudulent notice. The dispatcher sounded bored, but logged the call. 2 hours and 30 minutes after the notice went up, the gravel at the bottom of my drive crunched. 3 men stepped out of a white utility van wearing reflective vests with Summit Hills watch patches sewn on. A fourth followed with a shoulder-mounted camera, already recording. One of them carried a clipboard. Another had bolt cutters hanging from his belt, like this was a renovation show gone feral. Russ Marion, clipboard asked. That's me. We're here to supervise compliance with the vacating order. I asked them if they'd like to leave before this got embarrassing. Clipboard handed me a document. This one had seals, city letterhead, a reference to a municipal reclamation action claiming my home had been sold at auction due to unresolved violations. It was a good fake. Too good. The formatting was off by just enough to make my teeth itch. I told them to wait where they were and called the sheriff again. Then I went inside, pulled up my camera feeds, and switched my system to internal broadcast mode. Every angle, every mic, every second recorded locally and mirrored off-site. The deputies arrived fast this time. They looked at the document, looked at me, looked at the men. One of them took the paper, folded it carefully, and asked the clipboard guy where he got it. "From our president," he said, "Karen Grayson. She consults with municipal partners." The deputy's eyebrow went up, just slightly. They ran the reference number, nothing. They ran the address, clean title. No liens, no orders, no auctions. One deputy asked Karen's name again and stepped aside to make a call. When he came back, he told the men to pack up and leave. Then he told me, quietly, that someone had crossed from civil nonsense into criminal territory. As the van pulled away, the guy with the camera lingered. He looked back at me and muttered, "She said this would be easy." That night, I didn't sleep much. I reviewed footage, logged timestamps, copied files, and for the first time since moving in, I stopped thinking of Summit Hills Watch as an annoyance. They weren't trying to control me anymore. They were trying to remove me. It didn't take long for the next move to come. Just under a week later, on a Tuesday morning, I walked out to collect the mail and found a bundle of glossy flyers sticking out of every box along the private road leading up to my home. Mine had 2 copies because I guess they thought redundancy added credibility. The flyer had my face on it. A cropped photo from one of my security feeds, me carrying lumber, squinting in the sun, looking about as threatening as a dad building a shed. Underneath it, in big bold font, "Who is living among us?" Below that, reports of unregistered behavior, aggression, mental instability, known to refuse compliance with community norms. Do you feel safe? No signature, no return address. Just the Summit Hills Watch logo at the bottom, as if that gave it legal weight. I stood there for a long minute staring at my own face under the word instability, wondering if this neighborhood had a playbook or if Karen was just improvising straight from the Cold War. That same day, my internet briefly cut out for 4 hours. When it came back up, one of my camera feeds, the one facing the hill trail, was down. I checked the wiring. Severed. Someone had snipped it clean, left the wire hanging like a calling card. I had backups. I always had backups. That night, I reviewed the footage. Caught a blurry figure in a hoodie just before the motion cut out. Not enough to ID, enough to piss me off. On Wednesday, I got a knock at the door. A man in a windbreaker flashed a badge and introduced himself as a compliance officer from the city's Department of Community Safety. "Routine inspection," he said. "There's been a concern filed regarding your residential status." My what? He flipped open a tablet. "According to records, this parcel may be currently unzoned for residential use. There's a discrepancy in the system. May I take a look inside the property?" I stared at him. "You're telling me my legal home is, what, a phantom lot? Could be an administrative issue. Filed by whom?" He smiled tightly. We don't disclose anonymous reports." I didn't let him in. Instead, I handed him a full copy of my deed, zoning maps, and the certificate of occupancy signed by the same damn city that sent him. He looked disappointed, but logged it. The next day, a letter arrived from the Department of Natural Resources. Apparently, I was now under investigation for illegal deforestation on the southern slope. The letter included a photo, blurry, grainy, time-stamped in the middle of the night, of someone standing near the tree line with a saw. Not me. I don't cut trees at 2 in the morning. I have a bad back and common sense. The accusation was laughable. I had permits for every tree removal and had filed a restoration plan 6 weeks ago. Still, the fact that the complaint even made it into the system meant someone was working angles. I began to suspect that someone had access to municipal portals, not just reporting things, but modifying records. That suspicion hardened into certainty when I cross-referenced the document metadata from the zoning complaint. It had a creation timestamp that predated my move-in date by a week. Impossible, unless someone had retroactively doctored the paperwork to create a false history. I checked the document's properties. There it was, edited on a device registered to K. Grayson using Adobe Acrobat Pro 2 days before I received the vacating notice. She was manufacturing violations, paper ones, digital ones, social ones, painting me as a madman with a chainsaw and a hatred for shrubs. The best part? HOA couldn't touch me officially, but that didn't stop them from firing every bureaucratic bullet they had access to. I filed formal challenges with every department, sent notarized letters, submitted footage and timelines. It was annoying, slow, but necessary, and every time I sent a letter, I CC'd my lawyer, but none of it stopped the campaign. Neighbors no longer waved when they passed. Some of them took out their phones when they saw me, as if I might scream at a bush or bite the mailbox. One kid flipped me off from the passenger seat of a minivan. His mom didn't even pretend to correct him. Someone had posted my address on Nextdoor with a warning. Avoid this home if walking pets or with small children. Known aggressive behavior. I didn't even own a damn dog. The worst part wasn't the lies. I'd seen worse in my federal years. It was the feeling that the walls were closing in, not physically but socially, administratively, like I was being erased step by step by a process designed to look like procedure. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at a wall of folders and emails, thinking about a phrase I'd once heard from a corrupt county clerk in Nevada. If you control the paperwork, you control the story. Karen Grayson wasn't just some suburban dictator. She was writing a story, one where I was the villain and the neighborhood. They were starting to believe it. By the end of the third week, my property file at City Hall probably weighed more than my truck tires. Complaints, notices, flagged inspections, most of them already debunked or overturned but still taking up oxygen. It was death by paperwork, and I'd had enough. I stopped reacting, started investigating. When you spend years in federal enforcement, you learn one crucial truth. Bureaucracy leaves fingerprints, and if someone's trying to bury you in red tape, there's a good chance they've stepped in their own mess along the way. I began with the zoning document. The one claiming my land was non-compliant for residential use. The file had been uploaded to a public municipal portal, dated 3 days before the first flyer appeared. Only this time, I examined the metadata more closely. Creation date, fine. Modified by K. Grayson. Again, but what really caught my eye was the embedded IP address attached to the upload. HOA offices weren't supposed to have back-end portal access, and yet this one came from a static IP block registered to Summit Hills Watch Administrative Center. That wasn't just a digital mistake, that was a trail. I pulled every public document that had surfaced in the last month with my name or address, cross-referenced upload times, 3 separate PDFs, 2 from the city's complaint intake system and 1 from the Department of Natural Resources, had been edited using the exact same licensed software instance down to the serial number. It was sloppy, desperate. Even better, the tree cutting accusation, the photo had EXIF data. I stripped it down. GPS coordinates didn't even match my property. It was taken in a neighboring park nearly 2 miles away. I packaged all of it into a neat little dossier and sent it to my attorney, Mitchell Fairbanks, who specialized in municipal overreach cases. He called me 20 minutes later, dead silent for a beat before letting out a low whistle. You realize this is criminal fraud, right? Yep, like prison-level fraud. I was hoping you'd say that. He told me to keep gathering. No confrontations, no posting online, no righteous rage emails. Let the evidence pile until it couldn't be ignored, and so I did. I also installed 2 more backup servers and upgraded my camera array to cover blind spots, motion tracking, night vision, infrared, you name it. I turned my property into Fort Knox with a porch swing. Then 2 days later came the break I didn't expect. An anonymous email hit my inbox. Subject line, "You're not crazy." No sender, no signature, just a .zip file attached with a short message. She's not just HOA, she's working for Elevate. See attached before they find it. Now, Elevate was a name I knew. A regional developer with a shiny portfolio and a reputation for muscling through zoning boards like they were styrofoam. They specialized in flipping underutilized parcels for premium condos and multi-unit family housing. The same company that had already gobbled up land just beyond Summit Hills. I opened the zip. Inside were internal HOA board meeting minutes, budget reports, and a PowerPoint titled Proposed South Slope Acquisition Strategy, Confidential. Slide 3 hit like a punch to the jaw. A satellite image of my property with a red border and a note that read, Target parcel for Phase 3 expansion. Acquisition priority, high. Barrier, non-compliant owner. Solution, procedural displacement via HOA cooperation. My name was right there, in black and white. Karen wasn't just on a power trip. She was working hand in hand with Elevate to squeeze me out. My land wasn't an inconvenience. It was an obstacle to a multi-million-dollar expansion. The metadata on the slides linked the file back to a user login labeled KGRAYSON-SHW. They weren't trying to destroy me because I planted fir trees and used dark stain on my siding. They wanted the land. Suddenly, everything made sense. The fabricated zoning issues, the character smears, the fake inspection reports. I wasn't just a problem, I was a target. The next day, while I was processing all this, I got a knock on the back door. Not the front. The back, off the deck, near the woods. It was a man in his 40s, slim, clean-cut, wearing a windbreaker with a Summit Hills badge. "I'm Eric," he said. "Eric Taylor, board member. I need to talk to you." Off the record, I stepped out cautiously. He looked around nervously, like we were in some Cold War spy drama. "I didn't send you the file," he said immediately, "but I know who did, and I've been keeping notes. I didn't sign off on any of this. I didn't say anything. I just listened. Karen's working with Elevate. She's promised a position, regional director maybe. She thinks once you're gone, the rest will fall like dominoes. But this isn't what the HOA was meant for. I thought she was just being pushy at first, but now..." He trailed off and pulled a USB stick from his jacket pocket. "This is everything I have. Internal emails, fund transfers, meeting records. I copied it before she purged the shared drive last week. I asked why he was coming to me now. Because someone's going to get hurt, and it's not going to be her." Then he turned and walked away, back into the woods. I stood there for a long moment, holding the drive. Karen Grayson had crossed the line from suburban Queen Bee into full-blown corporate asset, and now I had the blueprint. By the time Friday rolled around, my desk looked like something out of a courtroom drama. Labeled folders, USB drives, highlighters scattered like crime scene markers. And in the middle of it all, 2 flash drives, one from my own investigation and the other from Eric Taylor, the board member who had taken a serious risk walking through my woods like he was in a Cold War thriller. I didn't waste time. I compiled everything into a single bomb-proof file package and took it to the county prosecutor's office myself. No email, no online drop. I drove there, walked through security, and dropped it into the hands of a woman named Amanda Rivas, Assistant DA for Property Crimes. She didn't say much when I explained the situation. Just listened, eyes narrowing as she flipped through a few printed summaries. The moment she saw the HOA document metadata linking to Elevate Land Holdings, her brows lifted. "This might be bigger than a civil matter," she said. "I'm counting on it." She promised they'd launch a formal review within 72 hours. That was good enough for me. Back home, I started putting the final pieces into place. I organized timelines, transcribed every threatening voicemail Karen had ever left, 7 in total ranging from passive-aggressive to outright gleeful, and cataloged every municipal notice that could be traced to her IP address or devices. Every fake violation, every zoning lie, every flyer with my face on it. And then I played my trump card. Using the files Eric gave me, I discovered 2 HOA budget entries under the label Community Risk Mitigation totaling over $12,000. The recipients? A shell company called Greystone Solutions, LLC, and another listing simply marked as Civic Outreach Consulting. Both LLCs had no websites, no phone numbers, but one had a payment record that matched the invoice number on a quote I'd intercepted from one of the contractors who'd shown up during the forced eviction fiasco. Translation: HOA funds, dues paid by the residents, had been funneled into a black ops smear campaign against me. That's not just unethical, that's embezzlement. I flagged it, documented it, sent it to Amanda. Then I called a local journalist I knew from my days in the federal system. Her name was Laura Keyes, a brutal investigative reporter who had once buried an entire city council under a corruption scandal involving embezzled snowplow contracts. I gave her the surface-level story. No deep dives yet, just enough to bait the hook. She asked one question: "Is this going to be worth my time?" I replied, "A rogue HOA president, a corrupt land developer, and a fabricated public record scheme to steal private land. You tell me." She said she'd start digging. That's all I needed. Meanwhile, things were heating up inside the HOA itself. Karen called a special closed-door board meeting the following Monday. Eric fed me everything: audio recordings, agenda notes, even a copy of her opening remarks. She opened the meeting with a single objective: invoke a procedural vote to formally designate my property as a community impact concern. Her plan was to push a resolution requesting the city declare the parcel blighted and seek eminent domain review. That would never fly legally, but she wasn't aiming for reality. She was aiming for optics. If the HOA could make it look like the neighborhood supported removing me, she figured the developer could use that as leverage to get the city involved. If not this month, then the next. One more angle of pressure. But the best part? Eric recorded the entire meeting, and he leaked it to me. The audio was gold. Karen's voice clear as day. We need him out. His land blocks South Slope access. He's not one of us. If we can't buy him out, we push him out. Legally or not. Another board member tried to push back, but she shut them down. We've already invested. Elevate is committed. If this falls apart, it's on us. It wasn't just HOA overreach anymore. It was conspiracy. Armed with that tape, I made another trip, this time to the state attorney general's office. I'd crossed the line from local harassment to organized property coercion. They took it seriously. Karen's name was now on multiple watch lists, and Elevate was officially under investigation for unlawful targeting of private landowners. And just when I thought the momentum was fully in my favor, HOA residents themselves began to notice. A retired Army vet 2 doors down from Summit Hills emailed me after overhearing Karen refer to urbanizing the slope at a barbecue. A young couple on the far end of the development asked if the HOA had used their dues for legal attacks because their landscaping budget had mysteriously disappeared this year. Word was spreading, and it was spreading fast. By the end of the week, a quiet rebellion had begun inside Summit Hills Watch. Residents wanted an audit. They wanted to know why their money was vanishing while their president was waging a private war on a man who wasn't even part of the damn HOA. Karen hadn't just overreached, she had miscalculated. Badly. The news broke on a Wednesday. Laura Keyes ran the story in an early morning piece titled, Private Citizen Targeted in HOA Land Developer Collusion Scheme, Utah Property War Escalates. Within 2 hours, my inbox was flooded. Reporters, legal blogs, angry residents from other HOAs, 2 podcasters, and a guy claiming to be a retired Navy SEAL who wanted to help with security. I ignored most of it. The article was already doing its job. The piece laid it all out. Karen's dual role as HOA president and paid consultant for Elevate Land Holdings, the fake zoning complaints, the attempted forced eviction, and the leaked audio from the board meeting. Laura didn't just write the article, she buried them in it. Names, dates, financial documents. It read like an indictment. By noon, Summit Hills Watch was trending on state-level Twitter. The HOA's Facebook page shut down. Their website went offline. The fallout had started. That night, I received another visitor. This time, it wasn't Eric. It was a sheriff's deputy, a real one, badge, cruiser, clipboard. He asked to speak to me privately and informed me that the DA's office had issued a search warrant for Karen Grayson's residence and the HOA's administrative office. They found everything. Hard drives, flash drives, printed copies of the false eviction orders, HOA funds traced to shell companies, a private messaging thread where Karen directed HOA board members to create narrative friction by leaking rumors about me to the neighborhood. And then came the line that made my stomach drop. She was planning to file a lawsuit declaring your parcel as community-managed land based on a forged covenant from 1989. I asked how that was even possible. It wasn't. The document was fabricated, looked real enough to fool a civil clerk, but the county records don't match. It was her final play. It was desperation, legal theater with forged scenery. Later that evening, I heard from Eric again. He told me the board had called an emergency session without Karen. He'd been named interim chair and was cooperating fully with investigators. Residents were demanding a full financial audit, a forensic accounting of HOA expenditures, and, get this, a vote to dissolve the HOA entirely. It was chaos. And in chaos, people start flipping. 2 board members turned over email threads where Karen discussed managing the narrative and accelerating exit timelines for my parcel. One of them attached an image I hadn't seen before, a design render for a luxury condo tower titled South Ridge Summit, with my property right in the middle of the courtyard plan. My land was already in the blueprints. They'd been planning this for over a year, long before I even bought the place. I wasn't a homeowner in their eyes. I was a placeholder. At that point, everything shifted. Calls started coming in from the city council. Apologies. Assurances. A personal message from the mayor's office that read, word for word, "We recognize the gravity of this case and affirm your right to full property sovereignty." It sounded like legalese wrapped in PR foam, but the sentiment was appreciated. Meanwhile, the state attorney general's office filed a motion to begin formal proceedings against Karen Grayson, Charges were stacking up: document fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit property seizure, misuse of public systems, and embezzlement. And then came the final blow. Eric emailed me late that night with a subject line that read, "You're gonna love this." It was a copy of a financial ledger dated 6 months ago. One of the payments to Civic Outreach Consulting, the shell company, was made through a secondary account. That account was tied directly to an Elevate executive's personal LLC, a direct money trail. Developer funding, HOA discretionary budget, private assault on my property. I printed it out and pinned it to the wall above my desk. They had planned everything: fake documents, smear campaigns, weaponized bureaucracy, coordinated harassment disguised as neighborhood management. And now they were unraveling fast. Karen had vanished from public view. Her house sat dark. HOA staff stopped showing up to their office. A few tried to wipe their LinkedIn profiles clean, but screenshots lived forever. The neighbors started to talk again, this time with apologies, cautious smiles, and in one case, a pie. I declined the pie. I wasn't ready for sugar and reconciliation. Not yet, because the real fight was about to begin, the legal one. The courtroom wasn't grand, no marble columns or mahogany thrones, just a beige government building with scuffed linoleum floors and buzzing fluorescent lights. But to me, walking through that door with Mitchell, my attorney, at my side and a binder full of hell in my arms, it might as well have been the Supreme Court. This was it. The people versus Karen Grayson. The state had combined charges: falsification of public documents, conspiracy to commit fraud, misuse of HOA funds, defamation, and attempted coercive seizure of private property. Add in a civil suit for damages, mine, and a class action from the HOA residents, and Karen's life had turned into one long docket number. She didn't show up the first day. Her attorney did, slick, tan, full of smug objections. Claimed she was recovering from stress-induced complications and deeply misunderstood. But then the evidence started rolling in like an avalanche. First, the prosecutors laid out the forged documents, PDFs with traceable IP logs, altered timestamps, and Karen's login details. Then came the financials, payments disguised as consulting fees, money wired to shell companies that looped right back to Karen's personal accounts. The jury wasn't full of corporate lawyers. It was 12 normal people who'd never heard of eminent domain manipulation until that week. But by the time the prosecutor played the audio clip, Karen's voice saying, "If we can't buy him out, we push him out, legally or not." Their faces said everything, and I hadn't even testified yet. When I took the stand, I didn't go for theatrics, just facts. I explained how I'd bought the land, what I'd built, how I was harassed, lied about, nearly evicted, and labeled a threat to the neighborhood I was never part of. I showed them the video of the compliance team trying to evict me with bolt cutters and fake city documents. I showed them the flyers with my face plastered like I was some criminal. But most importantly, I told them how I'd traced every single piece of paper back to Karen and her plan to hand my property over to Elevate for a condo complex I never consented to be part of. Karen showed up on day 3. She wore beige and a blank expression, like she was already rehearsing a redemption arc. When the HOA's own treasurer testified that Karen had personally approved every shady transaction and screamed at him for asking too many questions, I caught the first crack in her mask. But the moment that broke the case came from Eric. He testified clearly, directly, explained his role on the board, how Karen manipulated meetings, silenced dissent, and purged digital records. He confirmed that she coordinated with Elevate, promised future positions, and used HOA authority to launch a campaign against a homeowner who had no legal ties to their jurisdiction. He finished by saying, "I joined the HOA board to help my community. She turned it into a weapon." After that, the defense had nothing. Karen's attorney tried spinning it as community protection gone too far. The judge wasn't having it. After 5 days, the jury deliberated for 4 hours. Verdict: guilty on all major counts. The judge sentenced her to 7 years for the criminal charges, with no parole before 4, and ordered full restitution to the HOA and to me personally. The civil court followed immediately. I was awarded $850,000 in damages, including compensation for defamation, attempted illegal eviction, emotional distress, and obstruction of lawful property use. Elevate Landholdings, faced with an impending state investigation, pulled out of the Summit Hills project entirely and issued a public statement claiming they were misled by local partners. Karen's name was nowhere in that statement, which made it all the more damning. The HOA was required to undergo complete reorganization under state supervision. Residents voted to strip Karen of any legal or honorary standing and, ironically, voted Eric Taylor in as acting president during the restructuring period. The look on Karen's face when they read the verdict was cold. Not rage, not regret, just the blank stare of someone who finally realized the hammer wasn't symbolic. It was real, and it had come down hard. As we walked out of the courthouse, Mitchell nudged me and said, "You know, we could sue the developer too. Might be fun." I told him to give it a week. I needed a porch beer first. It took almost 3 months for the noise to die down. The media attention eventually moved on to some mayoral scandal in Ogden. The HOA infighting simmered into a formal mediation process under state oversight. Karen's house went on the market, quietly, through a bank. She never returned to pack. Movers came in silence, supervised by a bailiff. The trees I planted on the south slope were doing fine. In late October, I got a letter from the county. Not digital, real paper. Heavy envelope, official seal. Inside was a signed resolution confirming, in legal language so plain it practically glowed, Parcel 11R is recognized as a sovereign residential unit excluded from all present and future Summit Hills Watch HOA jurisdictions. Any attempt to assert regulatory authority over said parcel shall constitute administrative overreach subject to criminal review. I had it framed, not because I needed the reminder, but because I wanted the next poor soul who tried anything to see it the moment they walked into my front hall. A few weeks later, I put up a sign at the end of my driveway. Nothing dramatic. Just black text on brushed aluminum. "I am not your neighbor. I am your border." I think it made my point. I never gave interviews. Refused every podcast, declined 3 documentary crews, and didn't respond to the blogger who offered to turn the story into a serialized audio drama called The HOA Wars. I didn't need closure. I already had land, peace, and an $850,000 reminder that I was right. Eric stopped by once, unannounced. He brought a 6-pack and didn't say much. Just stood with me on the porch for a while, watching the wind move through the trees. Eventually, he muttered, "She fooled all of us." "No," I said. "You knew, and you did something." He didn't reply. But when he left, I noticed he'd left one of the beers behind. On purpose, I think. A small gesture, a line drawn in favor of the right kind of neighbor. Summit Hills limped along. The HOA didn't dissolve, but it was never the same. People were quieter, less smug. Some houses were repainted darker colors. Fences went up. The neighborhood no longer cared what shade your garage door was. In early winter, a family moved into Karen's old house. They didn't say much, but they waved when they passed, and they never came to my door with recommendations. I took that as progress. Sometimes I still get emails, folks who read the court summary or who saw Laura's archived piece. They ask how to fight back, how to push through when the system seems rigged. I usually tell them the same thing. Get everything in writing, record everything. And remember, paper trails burn slower than reputations. Then I turn off the computer, pour a drink, and walk the tree line. It's my land. It always was. And now the whole damn state knows it.